Anyway, hate to be a little drum, but I just, I've been watching a couple of news articles this weekend and last night, and the country's really getting crazier and crazier. So, and I'm saying the same thing in hopes to get people's attention, because we need to have a united middle class. A united and healthy middle class creates a strong America. And you have to listen to who wants that to happen and has ways of making it happen. And then we need to vote people in and vote people out according to their strengths or weaknesses. And it's going to take some time to do, to get finally a handle over our political system, because we have no handle over this. And the founding fathers gave us this. We owe it to them. They weren't perfect people, and they were elites, but they at least saw that this country, the middle class of this country, needs to run the important issues directed by our politicians. And just like you have a head of a company and you have the crew of a company, if that's not going right in a company, one or the other, that company goes out, right? Well, this country is much, obviously a whole different scenario, but it matches a bit, because we're on the way to communism right now, or socialism, and there's just no getting around that fact that either we come together and we pull together and we look out for our neighbors and we talk to each other and we do those things that our founding fathers gave us the freedom to do, or we don't have a society anymore. Anyway, we're going to start getting this down. I'm still working on some lighting. Barbie's moving to California, so she's going to be producer Barbie remote. But I think we might be able to get her on camera this way. So with all of that said, you guys have a great weekend. Say hi to each other. Go out and say hi to somebody. Just wave at them, man. Start that way. Just wave at them. Every time you see them, wave at them if you don't know them. And then you'll see the reaction change, evolve. You'll see the body language evolve. Go out and say hi to a couple of people today. Anyway, love you guys. Thanks for being here. Hey, and as I say in that video, thanks for being here, and go out and say hi to somebody today. I'm Rod Duff. I'm the host of Insights and Straight Talk. That's where you are right now. I was just talking to Matt. It's going to be a great conversation. He's one of those rare, very intelligent people that also have a sense of humor. So we're going to have some fun today. I've got some light shining through, so I've got we still haven't fixed all the lighting issues or much of the beauty and the sophistication that other shows have, but that's not our gig, as Matt and I were talking about earlier. And I'm producer Barbie and I talk a lot on this show. But before I get into that, I just wanted to say that a gentleman called from yesterday's show. He called me up right before the show and I said, "Hey, I'm taking your call real quick, but I'm getting ready for the next show. Anything you need quick?" He goes, No, brother, go do your thing. And he goes, "I just wanted to let you know that you're really bringing on a message that people need in this country, and the great middle class really are thriving for, and you're affecting and you're having that positive effect." And when you hear those kind of things every now and then, it's very nice to hear, and it kind of gives you additional energy to put that next effort in. And the reason I say that, I even bring that up, not a pat on the back or anything, just a lead in to say, I'm trying to bring we're at almost 10,000. By the way, please subscribe and to our Substack Insights Insights Straight Talk at Substack.com, as well as the show on YouTube. We're at almost 10,000 on YouTube subscribers, and we're across social media. We're a little over 27,000. So that's all just in over a year and a half. Not even a year and a half. It was May last year, so whatever that is. almost a year. Well, no, I guess it is a year and a half now. So please keep bringing on the information you guys bring on, and keep help building the show, and subscribe. It does help our efforts to bring these messages to you. But to that point, I was producer Barbie and I were talking last night, as we do quite a bit, about different things. She actually called me because she had a bike delivered to my house. That's another story, but we were chatting about that. And then I asked her, I said, what did you think about the monologue last night? Because I was really inspired by it. I was very happy. And she goes, yeah, it was good. I'm like, okay, you didn't like that, huh? But as we were talking, she said something that I really needed to hear. She said, stop trying to read your script. That's not our voice. That's not the voice of our show. Our show's about real people, talking real life. And she's right about that. Don't you hate that when your partner's right? I'm talking to us guys now. We deal with that a lot. We're never right. But sometimes she's really right. I mean, and I can't argue with that. So I'm opening this as if I were sitting on a couch at a friend's house, house party, like Matt and I were just talking. The coffee's strong enough to wake the dead, and people talking truth without filters. But I'm going to deliver it with that. I'm going to try this with that Rod Duff rhythm, that snap, that speed, that energy, because the topics matter. And today, I was telling Matt, I'm a little bit nervous about doing this today because this is my least wheelhouse. I got to get out of the sun. It's like right in my eyes. But they're probably some of they are the most important topics we'll talk about on this show, because this is at the end. This is about money. This is about risk, law, taxes, probate. Now, I built a business over 30 years, as you all know, in the machinery business. But so I know a little bit about business, but liability and estate planning, these are things, like me, most families avoid until it's way too late. The stuff the wealthy plan for every single year. Think about the difference here. We're bringing on episodes that are specifically to empower and emphasize the great middle class. Now, when we're talking about a subject like we're talking about today, there's a difference. Now, I know there's a lot of jealousy in the elites and the ultra wealthy, and there's all these things we can get into discussing. But then there's a lot of things, because we talk about this on this show, that we got to start looking inward to. What do we say? Build from the inside out, right? So the wealthy plan for this stuff every single year, right? The great middle class assumes it's fine because no one told them otherwise. So I'm not giving you a polished speech today. I'm giving you some sharp points. So I really want you guys to think about real thoughts, okay? Stuff that you and I can riff on while we're chatting with Matthew here. Because today's guest, Matthew Meredith, works at the exact intersection where assumptions break and families get blindsided. He's not just a lawyer. He's not just a financial planner. He's not just a tax strategist. He's all three of those under one roof, in one brain. Imagine this. You've got the ability to have a $500 an hour lawyer, a tax strategist, and a financial planner pulled together for this hour and a half. Call it a consultation meeting, right? But you've got some real important money matters here, because let's face it, most families think they're just protected just because nothing has happened yet. Okay, that's not protection. That's luck pretending to be a plan of some sort. And I get it. I'm there. Wealth rarely explodes dramatically. It leaks out from slowly neglect, kind of like that haircut, that really sharp haircut that you let go and it gets all ratty and out of whack because there's no attention to it. Everyone entrusts. Let's shift a little bit. insurance is something you don't really think about a lot. You don't talk about a lot. And sometimes you don't turn your phone off when you should. I'm going to put that on silent here. Sorry, this is going to be a little bit longer opening than normal. So insurance, everybody, until they learn that, what insurance doesn't, what it excludes, what it doesn't include. Coverage and protection are two different worlds. And we need to think more about that. For instance, a will or a trust in a drawer gives people this false confidence. And believe me, I'm going through this right now. Paper doesn't protect you. Execution is what protects you. The wealthy put all of their advisors, I was talking about this a second ago, in the same room. The middle class keeps everyone separate and hopes that the best will come out of that. Taxes are the quiet thief in the night. Lawsuits are very rare. Taxes show up every year without missing an appointment, right? Kids inherit money, and I've gone through this. A 19-year-old getting over $1 million. I fought against it. I was the bad guy, and it was gone within a few years because, immaturity, a plan without one, that mismatch destroys more wealth than a market ever will. Most plans focus on assets, and this is the thing that got me, not people. It's the spouses, the kids, the executors who are the ones who are going to determine this outcome. So this thinking, this logic is a big deal because the middle class waits for disaster. The wealthy plan for it to arrive. Reaction is expensive. Preparation's quiet, but it's very powerful. And these are some of the things I'm starting to pick up on. The real goal isn't avoiding death, taxes, or risk. It's avoiding chaos. And that's the thing that really gets you in that punch in the gut. That's what today's about. It's not about fear. It's not about panic, just clarity. The kind of clarity most families never get because they've never known what questions to ask. You got the guy here, folks. If you've got questions today, ask them. Ask those questions. Bring your story. Bring your confusion. I'm bringing all of mine. I got plenty of it. Bring the thing you've been avoiding. Tonight, it's not about being perfect. So don't worry. Believe me. It's about getting honest and protecting what you've spent your whole life building. So Matthew, let's get into it, brother. How you doing, man? It was a great conversation back in the green room. I hope you didn't touch any of those peanuts. We were watching. So,
I was good, Brad. I was good. But thank you for an amazing introduction into it. And it's a pleasure to be here with you and your guest. And
so do I get a thumbs up on that one? Was that a little
two
bit
thumbs
more
up, my man.
All right. You've watched a couple shows, so that was within the style. I can go home here shortly and be relieved that Barbie is going to go, okay, that one was better.
I think, as we discussed, there's so much when you're doing a video podcast that you want to say. And I've tried to memorize things so it's more natural, and it just, they can tell. And so everybody likes a natural way. But then afterwards, you sit back and you're like, oh, geez, I forgot to say estate planning.
Right, exactly. That's my biggest fear. So I try and do that, but I'll find a balance somewhere. I've got, as we said, 412 shows today under our belt here. So I've started doing this. I forgot to ask you a survey. I've started a survey, by the way. This is a little personal thing. So I started this survey yesterday. I've got, like I said, we do 6 different guests a week. So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to try and find this out because here's what I want to do. We're building to get to 10,000 subscribers, as you know, and our Substack is an extension to this. By the way, I'm also starting I'm really excited about this. I've started writing a column for the Mangum Star, their newspaper here in town, and now I am their columnist. So we're adding all this information, going out to the great American middle class, and we're building on it. But my question is, this is just a survey for guests coming in, because we get asked have guests every day, basically every day, come on and ask. And I'm going to start saying, we used to charge, and I quit doing that because I had to do more stuff, and it was just more difficult than it was. Well, not that it was worth. Money's money, but as you know, but if I ask you a question, if you came on for, like, we're already doing this, so irrelevant, but and sorry everybody, I should have done this in the green room, but I forgot. This survey is this. Yes, we'll do your subject. It sounds great. I love it. Blah, 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 like we do a matchmaker. Here's a link. But I'm going to start asking people, look, we don't charge. We're not going to charge. We'll never charge. Never again, anyway. But you've got to be willing to sign up for a free, obviously, YouTube. It doesn't cost anything to subscribe. And we have a free Substack. So if I was to ask you that question and you were just signing up, would you agree to that? I wanted to ask you before, not after the show, because I think after the show, you hopefully will be liking it. But would you go ahead and request to be on the show still?
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of people who are coming on your show have a message. And so a lot of them already have the YouTube. They're working on the Substack. And so without a doubt, sign me up.
All right, I've got 2 out of 2 so far. Just starting the survey, so
well, I'm not going to tell you no on your own show.
I know. That's why.
No,
that's
Rob,
why I do.
get away.
I did that. I knew that was unfair, but I got to check off my. I got to get in that habit of doing it. So sorry, folks. We've got. What do we got? Like 3 or 4 people on already. Somebody else just jumped on. So Matthew, we're going to be talking about a very important series of subjects, which are all under the same umbrella: financial wealth, or passing that on, or protecting that. And I've got a lot of questions, so I'll be jumping in and joining the conversation, obviously, as well, for my own personal needs, as well as I'm sure many in our audience will have those same things going on, as far as questions and needs, and how do I handle this, and what do I do, and how do I get in contact with you? How do we put this together, all that stuff. And I already told you, towards the end, I want you to put in a private chat, if you would, your contact information, because these kind of subjects matter. When you're talking about, over 30 years, I built up a machinery business, and then I wound it down, and long story, and then started this about 1.5 years ago after I wound that down. Kind of, this is my gig. This is what I do for a living now. I basically play video games all day. I play on social media all day. I know it's horrible, but at the end of the day, this is important, because you've got to be able to have your life's work. I said it in the beginning. It rarely does it just explode, a business, wealth. It usually is something by neglect that fizzles, that leaks out, and by other ways, mainly by uneducation. So let's start, Matthew, with you, as we talked about. What was the journey that got you onto the journey that you're on now? And very rarely do you see a lawyer and a certified meeting planner. We have either or a lot of times, because we do talk a lot about finances and crypto, and kind of fits into one of the lanes we work within. But how did you develop that full picture that makes actual sense? Bringing that team together, in your case, under one brain. How did you get there? What was the journey that started you on that path? What made you want to go into law? My God.
Well, that was a later decision. Let's start from the beginning. I was born in the bayous of Louisiana. My mother was a teacher. My father was electrical draftsman, not really the engineering, but the draftsman. And so my father was very outdoorsy. He would take us fishing, Louisiana, canoeing and fishing down the streams. But my mother insisted that education be a main thing, because she was a teacher. And so in the summers growing up, and before we could go out and play, we had to do 3 hours of work. So reading, writing, lots of science, lots of math. My mom was a math teacher. And so that instilled in me understanding from both my parents that there is two forms in this life. There is the enjoyment of the outer world, and then there's the education that we must have. And growing up, moved to Houston when I was around 22, and that's really when it started. I got a roommate who was an ex-Wall Street broker working in Texas, going through a divorce, said, hey, you're new here. Let's get a place together. You can have the bottom floor. I'll take the third floor. We'll meet in the middle, then hang out. And I said, definitely. So I pay utilities. He pay everything else. And I paid attention to what he was doing, because at this point, I had started at LSU, was pre-med, all the way up through the 3.5 years, second organic chemistry class. And the day before, it was summer, so you had class every day. The day before, I got a paper cut on my thumb, and I stamped it into the book. And so the next day, I'm looking at the blood on the page, and I said, God dang it. And I closed the book up, turned around, and started walking away. And my friend who was sitting next to me, where are you going? And my exact words, I don't even like blood. So that was the change. And so ended up moving to Texas, got up at U of H. And at this point in time, I was going to school full time, working full time just to make incomes and pay these utilities. And this guy was always on his phone, in his boxers, just loving life, making phenomenal money. And I said, man, what do you do? Teach me what you do. And so I knew that he was Wall Street. I knew that he was ex-broker. And he said, well, do you have any money? I said, well, I got some student loan money. He said, perfect. Let's go invest it. And so I opened up a brokerage account and started trading. And I was trading penny stocks, things like that. And of course, things took off. And it's my senior year. I'm studying advertising, marketing at U of H last semester. But I was making all this money on paper. And I said, I don't want to do advertising. I'm going into this other industry of trading stocks. And so graduated about 1.5 years later, working some marketing business, still trading on the side. The same guy comes back and he says, hey, do you want to come over? We're starting a company and you can go get your Series 7 and some other licenses, and you can learn to, be a trader for a company. And it may turn into nothing, but at least you'll have a Series 7. And I said, absolutely. So I jumped on board with them, worked for a few years.
Series? Talk to me about a Series 7.
Sure. So a Series 7 is a FINRA license. So it's it allows you to trade equities, stocks, things like that. And so a lot of people, registered investment advisors, they only have a Series 66, which is more for managed money, things like that. A Series 7 allows you to do, back in the day, commissionable trades and things like that. And so I ended up having the opportunity when I joined with him. He said, look, we're going to open a trading desk in Boca Raton, Florida. Go down there and help them set it up. I'd never heard of Boca. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. I hate Houston. Let me jump into a car. So I drove all the way to Boca. I get there after driving 2 days, and I'm expecting to see the guy who I'm going to work for. I had only talked to him on the phone as a market maker a few times, and he's got a do-rag and a Harley. And I'm sitting there like, oh, I drove a long way for nothing. so I called my mama like, Mama, I think I made a mistake. And she said, why? I said, he's on a Harley and wearing a do-rag. And I'm in a suit. I showed up to Boca in a suit ready to work. And he ended up becoming a phenomenal friend of mine. We actually lived together and worked together, and it was Boca, so nice. Everything's expensive. We became very good friends, and I learned the industry. And while I was there, the roles of running a trading desk, you have to kind of have compliance. And so I was the youngest guy. These were all snowbirds from New York who moved down to Boca. We were a block from the beach, had this huge trading desk floor. And so one day they said, hey, you need to get licensed for compliance. So I went off, took my Series 24, got licensed in that. That's for supervision and compliance. And then things were going great and the economy crashed. And that was kind of the turning point. And as I sat there watching Lehman Brothers go to zero, I said, this industry's over. I have to do something different. And at that point, I moved. I ended up coming back to Houston for a little while, followed a woman to Norman, Oklahoma, of all places. And we didn't last for long, but 2 days later, JP Morgan offers me a job. And so I got into financial advising. At JP Morgan, I worked with a lot of the local people, small town Norman. and really I was really good at it because I understood the market. I understood how transactions worked and how people moved around. And so I was able to really make a nice living. But as I mentioned to you, Oklahoma has tornadoes, and I got hit by an F5 tornado in 2013, and I took it as a sign from God that I was no longer allowed to be in Oklahoma. So came back to Texas. Yeah, I came back to Texas, got up with another company, Capital One Investing, and I excelled. I was doing phenomenal. They kept giving me branches, kept growing. And in this process, I started being mentored by one of the vice presidents of the entire investment side. And so he had me start reading books, and he realized, look, you like to learn. What are you going to do? And I said, well, I'd like to spend several years doing deeper education. And what was happening at this time was, and this is very much so in the financial industry, is you have a client, he has a tax issue, he has an estate plan issue, and he comes and says, hey, what do I do? What are my capital gains going to be on this? Well, I know the answer, but I'm not allowed to tell him because I'm not a CPA or I'm not an attorney at this point. And I hated that. I hated that this person had to come to me, form a relationship, and when he has a problem, I have to send him off. And so what happens in this industry, Rod? You send them over to a CPA, you send them over to an attorney. The CPA is arguing with the attorney. They're not communicating. They're just giving opposite advice. The client's paying all this money from professionals, and none of it's in alignment with him. They're not even talking to each other, making sure, hey, we're going to do an S Corp election. You need to build out this LLC for them. Nothing's happening. So the client gets furious, comes back to me and says, thanks a lot, Matt. You screwed me here, and fires me. And I said, this is not the way this should be done. And so it happened in a conversation where they're saying, you're not a lawyer. This is why you can't give advice. And it was my ultimate, here, hold my Topo Chico. I'll be right back. And so at the age of 38, my wife is from Mexico. So we had gone to Mexico. She was drinking a pina colada on the beach in Tulum. I was sitting there swimming. And I looked at her and I said, I think I'm going to go to law school. And she just kind of grinned and, yeah, okay. And within a month, I was prepared for the LSAT, went and took the test, and boom, I got into law school here in South Texas College of Law here in Houston. And my focus was going to be heavy estate planning, but they don't really have that much there. And so it became tax, and it became a lot of tax. I kept taking law tax courses, and because I'm a certified financial planner practitioner already from before, I knew a lot of this stuff. So I had a good basis. But then it became, let's go grow some more. And so the goal that formed over here was, we need to do better for the client. The client comes in, they need help. We need to provide it to them. No more of these 5 different advisors with misaligned information. Let's build one company where you can get financial planning, asset protection, estate planning, all these different types of things that work together. But no professional is really doing it all or seeing a team that's doing it all. So it all becomes misaligned and doesn't really help you. And so that's really what Meridian has been, is the build out of all these things I've learned over the course of time, so that I can have that one-stop shop where it's law, tax protection, all in one. And it's been a crazy journey. It's a lot of work, but it's been quite a joy to go on.
How many people do you think actually go through all those processes to line up? Like you just said, your first experience in that was more of a, here, I know this and I know this, but I can't talk to you about it. So at a point, I've got to put you over here. And then you have that crossover that really isn't a crossover. It's actually a disconnect because there's different opinions, like we talked about in the opening, versus being under one brain. Do a lot of people, is that a percentage? I mean, this is irrelevant to what we're talking about, but just out of curiosity, that I haven't heard that a lot about somebody doing the across the band there.
I learned it's horizontal expansion through Rockefeller, is expand out to cover all the things. There's not many. When I decided to do it, and I actually graduated and had a law degree, I wanted to start marketing and advertising, and the firm that I was with said, look, we're not attorneys. You can't have this in-house. They have to be two separate companies, two separate addresses, two separate phone numbers. You can't talk investments on one side. You can't talk legal on the other side. It has been a nightmare navigating simply because we're not set up with it as an industry. And so a lot of advisors,
Right.
I was making fantastic money. There was no common sense of me going to law school, except, as I said, I was bored and I wanted a challenge. And if you're going to get an education, I looked at doing an MBA, I looked at doing a law degree, and I came to the conclusion, I'm going to go get a law degree. There's so much I can do with it. But the idea was never to become a litigator. I do some litigation just because you pay all that money, you should at least know how to sue somebody. But the whole point is that not everybody's motivated to drive that way because, A, you've spent all this time learning one subject. Now you're going to go learn another subject and combine the two. It's a lot of work. Ask my wife how much work it was. She almost strangled me 15 times while I was in law school. So we don't see it often simply because for most people, they're happy where they're at when they're successful, so they don't have to go. And as the industry has changed a little bit, they're able to bring other people who are experts at this. And so that allows them to kind of, hey, I don't have to be the lead guy. I'll refer to my in-house attorney. For me, it's always been the one-stop shop, but also I'm very customer service. And I don't even call it customer service. If you and me strike a bargain, I'm there to make sure the bargain is done. And so when you have a problem, you pick up the phone, you call me and say, hey, I was talking with the attorney. I thought we were going this way. And the answer will be, oh, no, we're going this way, or let me go talk to him, find out, and come back to you. And so it's not just adding the qualifications. It's what do you do with them? How are you going to make the industry better, which really drove me because I was so tired of telling somebody, look, I can't give you the answer. Let me send you to somebody else. And then you don't know what happens.
Yeah, that's a in my business, I looked at it. I look at it similar in that totally different industry as you know. But we were first just selling other people's equipment, and then we started building some stuff that other people didn't have, or we could build it a little better to add to that equipment. But then when you install that equipment, how it performs has a lot to do with how it is installed. You know, that it's the water's going in the right place. You know, the pressures are there, and you know that installation has a lot to do with the success of the overall package. And so I know exactly what you're saying, because it really sucks to be able to give some people some knowing where their guidance needs to go, but then you have to turn it over to somebody else, which you would do in my case. I turn it over to a referral to an installer, and they may or may not have the same vision or be what I consider good enough, or you know what I mean. So
Absolutely.
that plan I get totally where you're coming from. Um, how 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 long ago did you start bringing it all together? Let me ask you that. I should know that, but I'm sorry, I'm going blank on it right now.
So back in 2018, I ended up going to law school. As soon as I graduated in 21, I opened up the law office of Robert M. Meredith. And this was my baby law office. I still have it. I did a lot of probate as well as estate planning and other things, real estate. And I knew that it wasn't my main firm. I was going to build something else, but I wasn't ready yet. I had to go learn the intricacies of what law is. And I started realizing that you have these different disciplines in law, but they're all connected. They're all one thing. You might have a business, but what happens to that business if something happens to you? Well, it needs to connect back to the estate plan. Not only does it connect back to the estate plan, are you protecting it? Are you doing correct asset protection? So everything has to be formed. And you go to a lot of attorneys and you realize, oh, well, they'll do the estate plan. And this guy would do the LLC. Well, that's not good. Not good enough for me. I need the same people controlling the same aspects because I need to know from the attorney, whether or not you've connected the estate plan, the trust from the estate plan to the LLC, because if you die and there's no succession built into it, well, now you got to go to probate. And now we just completely ruin this business because it may take them months to get access to the company. And what you could have sold for $1 per share is now 30% on the dollar, and you've completely lost the company. And then that doesn't even bring.
Is with the example you just gave because it's sat there flat for this extended amount of time? Well, we talked about probate in the beginning. You'd never do it again if you knew how long it'd take, is one of the comments that it's
Yep.
this chasm that really is only there for those who don't plan. It has to be in place because they've got to be able to figure something out. But does the government ever really do anything best?
Well, we can go on and on about that. And that becomes the issue. Is I learned so much by seeing it done wrong sitting in probate court. When I first got my license, I would go to the Harris County probate court and I would just sit there. And the judge saw this guy coming in, and after a while he started asking, like, who are you? Where'd you go to school? Oh, I went there too. And so then it became, well, why are you here? And it was, well, I'm old school. I'm going to learn by sitting here. And so it became this. Every week I would go to probate court. I would sit there after everything was done. And so everything moved to Zoom. So it was just me, the bailiff, and the judge and some clerk staff. He would turn to me and say, all right, Mr. Meredith, what do you have for me today? And I'd stand up. He would make me come into the actual pen, and I would ask my questions, and he would respond and give me legal justification for it. And then he started understanding my background was finance. And he said, you really need to start getting in, helping us, because there's not many people like you that understand the legal side as well as the financial side. And so they started saying, let's do dependent administration. Come help us do this. And that's when you really learn a lot, when you get in with the squabbling family and you realize, oh, this is a nightmare. These people are going back and forth with each other. There was no will. It's a mess and nothing's getting done. And so now they've had to hire me to come in and basically settle the estate at my fee. And so you see what should have been for the children go away because there is no will, or because they picked the wrong people to handle it. A perfect example when we talk about probate mistakes is co-trustees. If your son and daughter argue all the time, do you think they're going to stop arguing when you die and they have to make decisions together? No, I've yet to see it. Now I'm waiting for the case where they're like, oh, we don't need you, Matt. We figured it out and we're best friends again. Not going to happen, Rod. And so all of these.
Let me just add to that. We got about 70 people jumping on now. It's a little slow today. I'm kind of surprised by that. But you and I talked about before, if I want to empty some of my own dirty laundry, I can, ask some questions. Absolutely. And so forth. Right now, what you're talking about, probate, there's no will, this or that. My mom actually has, she passed away a number of years ago now. And her fifth husband is the what do you call him? Trustee, executor of the will. And what he ended up doing is he actually ended up changing the whole will. And now one of my nephews is his whatever, and they won't even let me look at the new will. There's some really and unfortunately over time, I think and this is important to talk about. About 100 people on, got a couple of questions started already here, but the reason I bring this up is there's also there's when you start fighting this stuff, there's a time. My God, I actually know more about law than I'm making myself sound right now. But time runs out. There's where you can't fight it after a certain amount of time. What's that called?
I forget the term for it, but after
I don't feel
years, you have trouble going back into it.
So I'm kind of in that boat where I've got a really bad situation, and now I won't talk to half the family because it's like, hold on, you guys broke up my mom's company that is in the same kind of thing that we do. She was in music, big music company out in California, and they actually Fender built their museum across the street from her store. Van Halen used to go in there, and was a local kind of celebrity, that store was. And so I wanted to I'm in that artsy kind of feel in my life, and I'm totally shut out. I have no. My mom appointed me as a VP of that's all gone, and so, I mean, this is a really big deal. So I wanted to ask you, what's some of the worst stuff you've seen, that, 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 like my story is probably a worst case scenario, but is it?
It's not a worst case scenario. There's certain
Afraid you were going to
options
say
you
that.
have. Yeah, there's options you have. It gets more into litigation aspects, and as I told you, I try to avoid litigation. I'll do breach of contract because it's pretty simple, and business owners need it. But with litigation, it gets nasty, and it's hard to be happy in a world when you're around people who fight and argue all the time. And so I've always tried to avoid it. But one of the problems I see often is blended families. You have a blended family.
There you go.
Father had children, marries stepmother. Stepmother may have a children. Father dies first. Stepmother gets everything, and then stepmother gives everything to her child. See that all the time. Another
That's
one
kind
that
of
I
what's
see.
going on. Hey, let me just add to you and keep going. But to add to that, in my mom's will, his son was specifically excluded from the will. He may not have because he's a mess. This dude was a mess. Whatever.
Did he write that he's a mess in there, or just excluded him?
Excluded him because he had and is to have no interest in it was my mom and his son and is to have zero interest in any part of the will. I've got the original. I haven't seen what the new one that they made up, but my mom's lawyer and the person who wrote who originally just received the trust. It's a trust and a will, and but they actually contacted me and said this is my mom's accountant, sorry, and her lawyer, and they both got fired because he had his new girlfriend is a lawyer, and
that's a common thing we see all the time. Another one, just to
common thing.
Yeah, that's why trusts are so much more important, because the trust will automatically create it. And to change a trust, especially for somebody who's older, if you completely revoke that trust, create a new trust, move the assets into it, it raises more questions like, why was this done? My mom has told me many times I'm getting all this, but now I'm not getting it. Was there some fraud taking place? Was this done under duress? And that becomes the main argument is, do you really think my mother meant to leave me out, or was this change? Here's the old one. So what happened between my mother and I between now and when she wrote this that I got disowned?
Yeah,
that's the question you start asking.
Exactly the point. Now is there a point at time where you can't really get it? I mean, there's potential fraud there. Isn't there more time in that to where is the laws different? Because now you're getting into litigation, so I don't know how much you want to get into that conversation.
And some of those things I'd have to brush up on. Typically, you have 4 years to bring a will up. After that, it creates some more issues. However, when there are circumstances that make you question it, I believe there is some allowed more time. I'd have to look into it. It's not something I've ever done. So
that's something we'll talk about afterwards. Maybe I'll
I'll find out for you and give you the answer on that one.
Yeah, I would love to have a chat about that. Go ahead with what.
But getting back to some of the mistakes you see, you mentioned
there's 300 people, by the way.
Oh,
There's 300 people.
fantastic. Disowning people. So wills are public. Every time someone dies and I do probate, I take the original will to the courthouse and they file it. It becomes a public document. So if somebody had a will where, let's say I was their child and they said that deadbeat Matt Meredith, he's such a punk and a liar and I hate him and he gets nothing, somebody may have just defamed me and I may sue an estate. And that's what people leave emotion out of these documents because they're public. And if you attack somebody, that son who wasn't getting anything, guess what? He just put a lawsuit on your estate and he might end up getting way more than dad had expected him to get. And so we have to be very careful when we're writing these things because there's a better way to write it. It's not like in the old movies where, you see this situation happens and, oh no, we're not doing it. A lot of times what you see is more because of reasons known, Matt doesn't get anything from this will. And you leave it at that. Another big issue I see, which we briefly mentioned, is who do you pick as the administrator or the executor to do all this work? It's a lot of work. I know it's a lot of work because I've done it. I'm dealing with certain things now. And so houses and assets need to be sold. You have money that needs to be distributed. You have beneficiaries who are bothering you all the time. And so what does mom or dad think when they're saying, who will be the executor? Oh, I know. I'll pick my best kid. Oh, I'm so proud of Matt. He's so smart. He's going to be the guy. He's married. He's a lawyer. He's perfect for this. Yet Matt has no time to do it because Matt's busy with his family, building his own business. So then it becomes, does it ever get done timely? So then the parent starts thinking, at least when I mentioned, do they have time for it? Oh, my youngest son, he lays around all day. He's got nothing going on. He'll be perfect for it. And then it becomes the one who hasn't moved off the couch since I got here. Do you really want him? So picking the right person is key. You can't pick people who are going to fight. You can't pick people who are just going to delay. It's a lot of work. These are serious decisions. And a lot of people, it comes down to, well, I'm going to pick them both because I don't want to offend one of them. Look, this is business. I get it. You don't want to offend one of your children, but if they can't get along, guess what happens? Nothing gets done. I'm dealing with issues now where they don't get along. They won't sign documents together. And so no money moves. And it just sits there. And now litigation has to begin. And so there's all kind of things that when you go online and create a will for cheap, you don't think about. And that's why estate planning is more than just, oh, it's a document, I'm giving everything to you. If that's the case, oh, it's a document, giving everything to you, fantastic. But most people have worked their entire life.
Rarity. It's a rarity, right?
Exactly. And you have businesses and you have transfer of ownership that has to take place. And so you have to start thinking of all these things going forward.
So what you just said brings up a really good, is a really good point for John's question here. John Morris. He looks like he's a lawyer. He's even got that stance.
He does, doesn't he?
He does, doesn't he? He's got that look. Almost 500 people on, by the way.
Oh, fantastic.
How can someone know if there's, did I get dark or is the view over there look okay? It looks dark.
Really good to me.
All right, good. I always want to look good. How can someone know if their estate plan has hidden gaps? And we've already talked about some other things that I want to talk about personally, but this is that situation that's okay. So I'm 60-ish. I've got a couple of assets here. I've got some things that I'm going to want to leave to my two boys, and it's a blended family, but it's not blended. I've learned from mistakes. And I had that happen with my father and then with my mother. And so this is a really important subject. But aside from those kind of things that we talked about already, which are important, if you're just, one person, I'm going to leave everything to them, boom, it's easy. That's one thing. But there's usually 2 or 3 kids. There's usually this or that. There's usually an A and B, or for blended families, A and B kind of thing going on. Things get a little bit more complicated. How do you know about these hidden gaps? This is a great question.
It is. Thank you, John, for asking the question. My wife's an engineer, so she's a civil engineer. She's PE licensed.
Oh, your
And from
kids
time
are
to time,
smart, huh? Your kids
our
are
dogs.
you-
No, they're
dogs.
terrible dogs.
Are you going to have any kids? Are you going to?
Oh, we're kind of past the point where we think we
Okay,
should.
so
I don't want to be
the
70
kids,
throwing a baseball with my son who's 13.
so yeah, I know, I hear you. So the kids aren't going to get it. You're gonna let this gene pool die with your dumb dogs. So
You know
okay,
what?
fair enough. But two brilliant people come together. I love it. Go ahead.
Well, and so she'll work from home a couple of days a week, and when she's here, I like to look at what she's doing. I like to read engineering documents, but when I look at a map, you have your drafted map, you've got all these things. I have no idea what I'm looking at. I need her to explain it to me. An estate plan is very much the same. You want another analogy, your car is making a noise, you lift that engine up. Well, if you've never worked on cars, you don't know what's wrong with it. It's clicking over here. That's got to be the problem. But you don't know why it's going to fail. Estate planning, tax, asset protection, all these disciplines, they're not something that you can really look at and know there's gaps. Typically, you have to have somebody come and say, why are you doing it this way? And at which point you say, well, because that made sense. And that's when the asking starts. I think simple things for you to know if there's gaps are the things we've discussed. The person who's the executor, can they handle it? What happens if you're remarrying? Do you want there to be a way that maybe your children get left out?
Hold here for a second, and please do continue your point. But I'm hearing this trend. It's really more about the people that are going to be executing it. You've got to think about them as you're developing that plan and who's going to execute it. The people are, and I picked that up early, but I just want to bring that up again. The people that you're putting in this plan, not you, but the person that's leaving the assets. And we'll get on to business here in a little bit because we need to protect against lawsuits and different things as well. But am I hearing this trend correct? You're leaning correctly. It's the people that are really important to these plans being successful.
100%. Everybody focuses on the assets, and the assets are because that's what you built. But it's like the old timer always says, "I don't care, I'll be dead." Yeah, you will be, and so you don't care, but everybody else cares. And so the main thing is making sure that it's executed the way. There's an old saying: "If you're going to live, then live." And I think that is important here as well. Finish it till the end. And so we talk about making sure that someone's there that can actually complete it towards the end and keep it going through. Now, the assets, if you're a blended family or you have certain things you want to go to certain people, that's extremely important too, because that's your legacy. And so you want to make sure your legacy goes out the way you want it, and that situations don't happen like what we're talking about, where the fifth husband comes in and now you've been disinherited from it. That to me is a major thing I talk to people about who have been married and they're split kids. Well, if you die first, what happens? Well, everything goes to my husband. Okay. And then what happens? Well, then it'll go to my children. Well, you can't really control that through a will. You need to build something that controls that. And so we talk about.
Is that the trust?
That's where you get into trust and things like that. And so people always, a lot of estate planners push trust because, you'll avoid probate. It's not about avoiding probate. Probate's not that difficult to go through. The trust is there to protect your asset. It rounds them up. It won't protect them from creditors, but it protects the interest in it. So you build a trust pretty much if you have something you want protected. That's how I always go. And so if you have complex things, let's say you have a lot of money. Remember, we've already talked about a will being public. Are you going to post to my 13-year-old son, I give you $100,000? Me as the banded robber who goes through wills on the website for the county says, oh, this little kid just got a ton of money. And so did all these people. Now everybody knows it. It's completely public. You don't want that. If you're giving things out, assets, don't put it in a public document. Protect the secrecy of it. Create the trust. The trust doesn't go through probate. And if you've done the trust properly, neither does your estate.
So are you saying then that, okay, this is interesting. This is a little bit different tack. By the way, I don't know if I'm out of the. I have no idea. They won't tell me anything. I can't even get a look at it. I guess I can do some research on public now that you said that, and see what other documents are out there. But
so typically, Rod, if you're a beneficiary, you have the right to ask for a copy of the will. If
I know, and I did.
That may mean somebody's taking you out.
Ah, yeah. Well, okay. And I would not be surprised by that. As a matter of fact, producer Barbie calls me a trust fund baby, and I say, well, we'll see.
Not anymore.
we'll really see. And what happened is, literally in the will, the store, the original store at 211, blah blah blah, Harbor Boulevard, 2,500 square feet owned, and multiple floors and all that, and in Southern California, in Orange County, obviously very valuable property. I mean, the assets of the company were like $5 million in inventory, and then the building was at 7.4 million. So what he ended up doing is shutting down the business, doing a fire sale, which I don't know where any of that money went, but and then he sold and in the will it said the will is to be split up this way, this way, this way, this way. The building of which Fullerton Music Centers sits is to be solely and separately to Rod and Tammy. 50-50 kind of split. And then the rest of the will is the house, the camper, cash in the bank, that whatever, that kind, the other stuff. Well, he sold the building and then bought a building next to my sister for, I think 6 apartments or something in Long Beach, which then her husband was hired to renovate, spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on that. And then I don't know what's happening then he bought a little store and moved the big store into the little store, and then closed down the business. And I don't know what's going on with anything anymore. So I've got a lot of digging to do, but man, I mean, that's also a lot of money, to defend and fight those things. I mean, so anyway, I'm going on a rant here.
It's all right.
That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. It's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. But the biggest thing is, that side of my family is no longer, in my opinion. I mean, they call me and stuff, and I'm like, you guys are the devil. I don't want any, and that's what happens in these kind of things, right? I mean, you've got a family. We were pretty close all along. Now I consider half my family, dead to me. And who knows? In the beginning, I put, it's a lot about confusion, and with confusion comes emotions, and then you get to where we are, meaning we are, my family and I are, and that's mainly because of me, because I mean, I was my mom's son. I'm her oldest son, and we had a relationship. And I actually tried to buy the store a couple of times because I'm a musical person, and I wanted her legacy to continue on. And there's assets there, but there's more than that. And so now it's like you're like looking through, you're at a high rise. I'm on the 15th floor, and I'm looking through a window, and I can see him back there, but I don't know what's going on. And that's the most frustrating thing about all this. And this is the kind of thing where you really need help to walk you through. We've got almost 500 people on. Walk you through and protect those things. And let's get into a little bit of business here, because a couple of things you brought up when you talk about a trust. Like I bought a little house out here in Oklahoma. So I have this house now. And well, I've always owned houses, but I bought a house out here after producer Barbie and I split up, and we're still friends. We talk every day. We're still involved in the show. We're better this than that. And at the end of the day, what is that trust protecting for this question and in my situation? And you do a will and a trust. Is that it won't keep, like, if there's creditors, they can still pierce that, right? But if it's like going on public notice, the public notice will be that there's this will, but it always refers to the trust and doesn't say what's in the trust. Is that kind of the protection that you're talking about? And let's add this to the biggest risk for small business owners regarding personal assets. So can you kind of roll those two things together and go through that for me?
Well, one thing to close out our last subject real quick on the will. We talk about this, and you have to go back and you have to think, would your mom have wanted it this way? That
No.
her children or that they're fighting back and forth. No, she didn't want that. This is a result that has happened. And that's what we try to stop happening is how do you want it to go? How do we make it so that your children aren't going to fight? How do we do this so that everything is copacetic? I like that word, copacetic.
I do too.
Yeah, it rolls off the tongue.
Awesome word. Awesome word. Awesome.
And that becomes a thing. Like, you've worked so hard to build something. You don't want to just dump it and hope, here, Rod, have fun figuring it out. No, you want to make sure it goes to Rod. And that's why you need somebody to help you read the engineering plans laid out before you. Because if not, you don't know. I learned from experience and seeing it and taking part in it. Most people have never sat in a probate court, so they don't know what comes up. And that's why sometimes it's best to pay more than the cheap online version if it's needed, so that you've got something protecting you. Now, jumping into asset protection and businesses and trust. Trusts don't really protect you from anything unless it's an irrevocable trust. We will create irrevocable trusts to move assets into them that protect. Most trusts have what you're talking about, spendthrift clauses, meaning that unless the trust is technically sued, there's some protection. However, it doesn't mean that they can't be sued. The estate can't be sued. And these are assets that are part of the estate in most cases. If they haven't been moved into the trust, that can become problematic. It's a lot harder to sue a trust that is irrevocable or an asset holding company.
What's the difference? What's the difference?
So revocable trust, also known as grantor trust, or I can change them. I can change it up while I'm alive. I can do anything. Irrevocable, a grantor trust, revocable trust will become irrevocable when you die. So what you wrote when you die, it's set in stone. There's also a way, though, to make a set in stone trust now. But what you're doing is you're creating an irrevocable trust. It's a separate entity. It has its EIN number. You might have control over it, but the assets really aren't yours. And in certain cases, for tax purposes and even legal purposes, you might not even be able to be the trustee on it. You're just the beneficiary. So an irrevocable trust, taking the assets out of your name, if you're sued personally, typically those are separate from you. So you hear things like very popular South Dakota Trust, Delaware Trust. These are asset holding type trusts that you're moving in there. There's tax purposes and all this. So those are the type of trusts that'll protect you. But if most cases, for most of our clients and for most of your guests, a regular grantor trust, me and my wife create a trust. We put some assets in it, the house, things like that. It's more for control. And if something happens, I don't have to go to the probate court, get letters issued. That takes 4 months, pay several $1,000s for the attorney. All this, it's already out of the estate. So if it's not in the estate, there's no need to probate. That actually rhymes pretty good. I'm going to trademark that for you. So,
Like
and
that.
so when we're using trust, they're not really protection. They're controlling. If we're going to protect things, it's either irrevocable or we're going into the next level, which is asset protection. And that
So what
is
are you protecting from in an irrevocable? Let's say I put a house and a business. I don't know. I guess you could put anything, right? Your cars, what you put any asset that you own, you can put into a trust. Now you technically, and this is what I understand very wealthy people do, is that the trust is there. It has instructions that go in action when whatever occurs, but you don't actually own that, or my kids don't actually own that. And people literally keep trusts going along, like very, and maybe I'm wrong about this, like let's say a Rockefeller kind of thing. They've never owned anything ever in their life. It's always the trust that has its activity, that does its function. Is that kind of is that what we're talking about
so a
in
lot
an
of the purpose.
irrevocable?
So a lot of the purpose of irrevocable comes down to taxes. So we all know the death tax.
Okay.
Government charges you 40% for pretty much everything in the estate after $1 million or so. I need to look at the numbers again. We want this out of the estate into its own entity because then it's not part of you. So there's no 40% tax on this type of stuff. And so this gets into gift and estate taxing where you may have a lot of money, you're giving some to your kids, and you're giving some to your grandchildren and generation skipping. And so you have credits for these type of things that you can do. So a lot of the stuff is you're gifting it out or you're moving it out into entities and things like that so that the estate is not taxed. That's when you really see a lot of irrevocable trust come. You don't typically create an irrevocable trust for somebody who doesn't have a lot of assets that do appreciate, because here's the problem: it's no longer yours. I saw this lady, she was told, hey, move $400,000 in irrevocable trust because it'll help you with taxes. Well, it may have, but she ended up needing that money to spend it. But there's certain rules about getting this money back. There's health, education, maintenance, support. We call them HIMs that you can distribute to it. But you can't really call the trustee up and say, hey, man, give me $50,000. I'm going to go to Hawaii. I can't do that, man. And so it becomes, if you're moving money for protection, irrevocable trusts are good if the shoe fits, you wear it. But there may be other easier ways where you maintain control and still get protection. And so irrevocable trusts, you'll see them a lot for tax purposes, for valuations. You move something into something, it goes way up in value. Well, you gifted it at a much lower price. So less taxes.
Interesting. So you can use that, but it's primarily it's a tax so when you say that, so the 40% to avoid that death inheritance tax, it's in a trust now. So I pass away, let's say there's a lot of assets in there in that trust. Now it continues on in the trust, and the kids don't actually own it, so there is no death tax. But how do they receive the benefit of what's in that trust, the next generation?
They're beneficiaries. So correct. So when you are doing trust, and it varies state to state, you'll have different types of laws, but a lot of times you'll set up a trustee. Here's an irrevocable trust for the benefit of my children and grandchildren. And so money is distributed out for health, education, maintenance, and support. And right. Sometimes other things. It depends on how you write the trust. But typically that becomes it. So little Johnny, he's going to go off to college. Well, that's education. The trust will pay for his education. It can pay for his support. What does that mean? Okay, we're going to buy him a condo in New York City, in Manhattan. Depends on the rules. Depends on, can you push it? States have different kind of rules about this. And then you have the IRS who likes to stick their head in and say, hello, don't forget about us. We find
Absolutely.
that this doesn't qualify, so we're going to tax you differently on it. So with the trust, it's really about moving the money out, protecting it, because now it's out of your estate. So you're not taxed on it when you die. And it now benefits the beneficiaries, the children, grandchildren, the dogs, people like that.
The dogs. All right, I'm curious what your dogs are going to get. You're a long way away from that.
You get the whole damn thing.
Now I'm curious what's going. So on to Johnny here. In that same thing, what are the biggest risks for small business owners regarding those personal assets? What are being sued, right? Small business has. I ran a small business built one up for over 30 years, and so there's a lot of risks. What are some of those risks? Johnny here.
Johnny, great question. It's one I'm asked often. So here's the thing. We're going to start a business. We want to separate this business from ourselves. So no sole proprietor. I haven't seen sole proprietors except for what I call the old timers who, I've always done it in my name. Or from time to time, I'll run into somebody who does real estate and they have 17 properties in their name. And I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. When you have an LLC or a business, let's just call it a business, not specifically LLC, but you have a business that is separate from you. It will shield you in most cases if everything is done properly. So if I'm sued in that business, it's hard for them to come over and get my personal assets, but it doesn't mean they can't. There's something, and I love this saying. Every podcast I've been on, I try to say it just because it's one of those funny words, piercing the corporate veil. What that means is they're going to break through the corporate veil, which hides your personal assets, and grab them. How do they do this? Let's say you didn't file your annual franchise tax, and now your business is defunct. Let's say you don't pay taxes. Let's say there's some other situations where you're going to take the wife to Hawaii and you use your business credit card to pay for everything because you want the miles, but you never reimburse the company back. That's a pretty big issue. Now the judge and the attorney, opposing attorney, is going to say, look, this is the same entity. He's using it as himself, and therefore his assets are reachable. And so that becomes the main thing. I believe in structure and layering. So you have your business assets to one side, and then you have your personal assets to another side. It's a terrible cliche, and I hate saying it, but it's absolutely true. Own nothing, control everything. So for most people, you'll have your business, it controls its business, and then you'll have a holding company, or we call them an asset holding company, that holds your personal assets. So this business will pay that holding company the income that comes in. It'll hold your houses, your investment properties, things like that. And it will even own the other LLCs or the entities that do business for you. So when this happens, somebody comes in, they say, hey, your LLC, we're going to try to break through it. And so they break through it, but now they're hit by another LLC up top. And so now you got to prove that I pierced this corporate veil as well. And so it becomes a little more difficult. But then again, let's say they get all the way through that, through your LLC that you're doing business with, and they get to you. Well, the answer is, well, guess what, buddy? I don't have anything in my name.
I don't got anything.
So your lawyer wasted all your money because there's nothing in my name. And I've done it correctly, that even if you can pierce through, because I made mistakes on my business LLC, this other stuff is locked away. And that is the asset protection. And the main question that comes from this is, at what point do I do this? When do I start protecting myself?
Right. Like what's being asked here, David is kind of asking what you're talking about. Are there ways to protect assets before business gets sued? Obviously, you want to do these before you get sued, but what is that? Go ahead. Expand on what you're doing.
A lot of the stuff that we do here, and this is more of the easier easier for people to understand. It can be a lot more complex, but let's use, for an example, you're a real estate investor. So you have yourself. Everything starts with the estate plan. I don't like doing asset protection for people unless I have an estate plan. Why? Because the trust that you have, which now you have a reason to have trust, you have a business. This business needs to continue if you die, so your trustee can take over that business versus you having to go to probate to get permission to come over and take over it. It carries on. But this trust owns everything. So you have to have that set up first. It's the ground floor level. If you do not have an estate plan, are you doing it right? Is what I'll normally ask somebody. So then you have this real estate property. Well, you don't want to keep the property in your name because if you get sued, that property's up. But you also don't want to take this property that's worth a lot of money and stick it with a bunch of other properties, because if you get sued in that property, they can grab your other assets. So now you start creating an entity that can usually create subsidiaries or children. So you have a parent entity and then you have children that branch down under it. And so in Texas, we use a Texas Series LLC quite often. They've been around for a while. They have withstood scrutiny. And if you do it correct, you have one LLC, but you're branching off of the child. And so you put a house in each child series. And so now they're protected from each other if one of them is sued, and you only have up at risk that one asset. But of course, like everything, there's rules to it. You got to file your franchise tax report. You have to keep separate bookkeeping. You have to maintain the entity in the right way. And if you do these things, now you're separating your assets out. But these are only your assets. If you're going to do business, well, you can't do business in this same company that holds your assets, because what happens if you and me, you hire me for something, you don't pay me, and I sue your LLC? Well, now I have access to all of this stuff. So you want to do your business through what's called an operating company. So now we have two LLCs, a holding company, an operating company. The operating company is who makes contracts. So for this example of ours, we have a real estate person. He has renters, he has roofers, he has all these people that are doing work. They do not have privy of contract to the actual asset. They have it to the operating company that's over here. And so if something goes wrong, let's say the renter sues you, calls you a deadbeat, well, he's suing you on the side of the operating company. In most cases, what we're doing is all this rental money, all of it comes in, but it's going to the operating company. And so that's where the lawsuit happens, where the argument happens. But when it comes in, we grow this money, and now we're moving it back over to our holding company, which holds our assets. So we have bank accounts, brokerage accounts, things like that, soft assets where we don't worry too much about risk coming with them. They're passive. And so when the lawsuit does happen, it's simple. And I've said it before. Look, my client has $7,000 in his business, and he's going to probably file bankruptcy. And if he does, it's all going to the lawyer. So what do you want to do? And now you've taken a lot of risk. It doesn't mean you don't get sued. It doesn't mean that, hey, they can come at you. It doesn't mean they're going to try to pierce the corporate veil. But now you've added all these layers into how your assets are. And you're sitting there as the individual owning nothing. Your brokerage accounts, all these things. I see doctors all the time who have huge brokerage accounts in their personal name. And I have the conversation like, what are you doing? If you get sued, the first thing I would go for is that brokerage account. And I tell a story all the time. When I first got into advising, I had a client. He got sued. Judgment came down. And you sit there, there's nothing you can do. And for the financial advisors, I always try to educate them. Hey, you better protect your client's assets. But again, that's law. So the financial advisor can't really say much about it because now he's stepping over his boundary of what he can say. And so here in the world, everybody's running around with all this money in a brokerage account and nobody's saying anything about it.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so that's the structure. And now it can be more complicated. You have more businesses all connected to a ultimate holding company. It's it's a fantastic way to move assets out of your name and protect you and your family. But ultimately,
I did a number of things almost right, falling just a little short. It's funny how you're talking about it being complex, and it can get more complex and this and that. But the reality is how you set it up either works for you or doesn't. And the reason I say that is I tried these different things with different companies and setting them up, and it sounds like there's a much better structure just between asset and operating. Those two LLCs, those two operating entities, and then having children. I wish I would have talked to you 10, 15 years ago.
I get that all about that exact same thing. Where were you 15 years ago?
Well, now I'm going to joke. Oh, go ahead.
Well, and I was going to say, you're adding a layer as well. So let's say you get a judgment on you.
Right.
Well, they'll come and they can take your income from the company that you're getting. So when we're structuring these asset holding companies or these LLCs, we're creating a top asset holding company that we try to build in anonymity through it. A lot of times I'll use a Wyoming LLC because they are anonymous. And so when your company pays, it no longer pays you directly, it pays your holding company. And so now you put in another layer of protection where it makes it harder for them. My wife and I talk all the time. We've always been kind of separate assets, but we have joint assets together. And the issue is, if I got sued or she got sued, joint assets can be attacked. So my money could be taken if my wife had an issue and had a judgment against her. So it becomes important. Don't pay yourself directly from the company, pay your asset holding company so that you're now storing it, protecting it, just like that brokerage account in it. You have a bank account and you take your money when you need it and protect yourself a little bit more. It adds layers. And I always say this, Rod, asset protection are like ogres, which are like onions. There's layers.
I like that.
Or parfait, if you prefer.
Let's peel back some onion, some of the layers of this onion, right? So I'm going to jump around a little bit here because they're kind of going across multiple avenues here, and some of it already being answered. Like for instance, if I go down here, by the way, this is Bradley Pomp. I made him a promise, God, a year ago now, probably. Anytime he shows up, I got to give him a shout out. So Bradley, shout out to you. Thank you for the question. Can real estate investors protect personal property from business lawsuits? And that was the example you gave early on.
Correct.
And like I said, I just want to hit their questions, but I think we've already got that. Is there anything you want to add to Bradley here? Because that was where we got in, where we started in this. If you're a real estate investor and you've got the business account or the operating account and then the asset account, that's how we started on this. Is there anything you want to add with Bradley to fill that out, a little more color in between the layers at all?
Bradley, what's important again is doing business. When we're doing business, we're doing it in an entity that is legitimate and up to date. I posted today on my LinkedIn, avoid the cheap LLC traps. Meaning when you form an LLC, you can go to one of these form places, pay a couple $100, you have your LLC form, but you have no operating agreement. You have no other documentation that really sets it. So have you really protected yourself? And so when you build a business, build it right. I know it's a little more expensive to do it right, but I don't have issues sleeping at night. I'm not worried about things. And I guarantee you my sleep is worth a whole lot more than a little bit of payment that will pay for itself over time. And so when you're doing these type of things, remember, get it out of your name, separate the entity from yourself. And if it's one of those spillovers, a lot of doctors, neurosurgeons, and attorneys, they're worried, well, they can come after me personally. Yeah, in most cases they can. And we have umbrella, we have E&O, but what if it's not enough? What if a doctor kills, 4 people on the table in 1 week's a really bad week, and his insurance isn't going to cover all of it? So now they're coming after him personally. Well, get it out of your name. that's what you're doing, so that
Mm.
there's nothing there to sue. Let me tell you, I've seen a client sitting with his attorney that they're just giggling as well. We're going to sue you for this. We're going to sue you for that, and they're giggling because they know, like, this is going to cost you so much money, and we're not going to tell you anything.
Yeah,
and that's
yeah. No,
what happens.
It's what you're talking about now is the reality of what most middle class Americans think, that, hey, I'll just have an LLC and whatever I do is protected now, and it's not. I mean, the end result is doable, but it's not the way we think about it. And we've been told all this time, and maybe it was true 20 years ago, but we've never heard anything since about it. And so we're still living under that same. You talked about umbrellas. There's so many more things to open up here, but you hit a couple of things, and I wanted to bring this one up right away, because what you just said: can insurance really fail to protect against a major lawsuit? And it depends on where you stand in that insurance, right? What's there and what's not.
Exactly. Dennis Jim. I think that the scenario for you is you have umbrella policy and you go play golf. Here's a perfect example. You go play golf, you have a kick back a beer or two, you're feeling great, and you're driving home and you screw up and you hit a bus full of people. Let's say the bus doesn't explode, but God forbid if it were, but a bunch of people get injured. Do you think your umbrella policy will cover all that?
No way.
No. And so these are the gaps that I talk about when we talk about asset protection. There's the hidden lawsuit, the things we don't expect of. As an attorney doing things, there is the possibility I could be sued for doing something wrong. I've accepted that. I have E&O. But what if I'm in the bar and my wife has a guy who hits on her, slaps her in the wrong place, makes me angry, and I punch him in the head, break his nose, and give him a concussion, and they turn around and sue me? These are the things that, yes, we have umbrella policies, we have protection, but that's not enough. When I was in Mexico, you and me talked about it. I'm in Mexico a lot. My wife is there. I love it. I'm sitting at a Chedraui in Guanajuato. I'm waiting on my wife.
Guanajuato.
Yeah, Guanajuato. That's
tequila capital of the world, right?
There's a lot of capital of the world in Guanajuato. Yeah, I'm sitting in the car, and it's a busy street on the side. And I'm watching, not really paying attention. The dogs are with me in the back. We're waiting. I'm impatient, like I always am. And I hear boom, and I see it happen. The guy flips over the car, hits the ground. And I'm like, oh my God, I just witnessed this whole thing. You know what happens? There was no lawsuit. There was no arguing and fighting. The guy got out of his car, picked him up. They talked for a little while. He brushed him off. They shook hands and he walked away. Blew my mind, because I'm thinking, this is the biggest lawsuit I'm going to witness all day. No, they don't sue like that in Mexico. They don't sue like that in other countries. But we do. We sue like that all the time. I paper cut myself and wanted to sue the McGraw-Hill, whoever made the book.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, that's our society. And that's why asset protection is so important. It's not personal in most cases. It's a form of business. And if you have a gap and that insurance doesn't cover it, you're going to pay.
That makes a ton of sense, especially when you say about our society that sues at every corner it can. Got two more. Well, there's a comment and a question here. One, because I want to get a little bit more clarity on this trust and will thing. And somebody's asking a question, so I'm gonna use that. But then there's a final comment here before we start to. We're an hour and a half already. This kind of went by. It was like, wow, yeah. My God, that was fast.
Let's keep going, Rod. We'll go all night.
I hear you, man. So I want to bring this one up for my own Jennifer Carter. what's the difference between a will and a trust in terms of protection? So we've talked about this, but I wonder why I'm getting a like a ding.
That's your
Oh,
phone.
I'm getting notified. That's my phone on my, but it's coming through my earphones, which is weird. Anyway, I want to know this more clarity for personal reason, because a trust and a will are two separate entities. Can you kind of add some add some colors in between the layers of that before we go into our last thing and kind of start to wrap this puppy up in a big beautiful
Sure.
bow?
So in this case, and what I believe Jennifer's speaking of is when you have a grantor trust and a will, what is the difference? Not much for protection, because your trust
Ah,
that you create is most likely yourself. It's not going to probate. That is the main reason why most people have trust is, oh, I want to avoid probate. I'm going to put my house into it. So I'm going to pay all this money just to put my house into it. There's better ways. The trust, though, when it becomes irrevocable, it's more like an entity at that point. So there is some protection. But remember, when it becomes irrevocable, a grantor trust, it means the grantor is no longer alive. So it's not set up for asset protection at that point. Ultimately, all the will and trust is doing is disposition and holding of assets. That's what it mostly comes down to. Hey, I've got young grandchildren. They're 8 years old. One of my sayings is I never give young people money. So the trust is there to distribute for that health, education, maintenance, support. A lot of times those type of trusts will give a little bit more. Give him extra money on his birthday. You can create all those type of things when you're not worried about estate and death taxes. So you can be a lot more lenient. But in most cases, the will is the exact same thing as the trust. You're telling the world, when I die, this is what I want to happen. This is who gets it, and so forth. The will does the same thing, except it's public and you have less control. I can't sit there and say, I have a grandson who's 13 years old. My trustee is going to give him $5,000 a year every day, really through a will, because once the will's probated, the will's kind of over. You don't have instructions carrying on. So that's why people use a trust, where it comes in more often in the way we do it. And I always tell people, I do estate planning, but I really do estate planning for people who need asset protection, because it's another level. And most estate planners don't understand the business side and how the business side is run, and then how the tax side works and all the tax strategy, which we haven't really talked much about, but actually cutting taxes versus doing accounting. That's a whole nother story there. But all of this works together in a way, but most people don't know it because nobody talks about it, because there's too many people making money on it from being a secret. And so that's why we're all sitting around twiddling our thumbs saying, well, I'm protected because I have a revocable trust. No, if you do something wrong, I'm grabbing that revocable trust from you.
wow. Wow. So as a lead in to kind of your what do you want to leave people with? And you're right. There weren't very many questions, which I was surprised about that. Maybe our audience is more looking at, because tax planning is another level, and it's really important. And it's also becomes really important when there's a lot at risk for the tax man or to the tax man. So I think maybe we ought to kind of do a show that's more focused on that in a follow up. But what would you want to leave people today on what we have talked about, which is basically asset protection? Basically our audience is really made up of a lot of small business owners and, that middle class America, that not the owner of the 500 Fortune 500 company necessarily, who has a team of tax professionals and asset managers working for them. We're on that want to get there stage, and so I get the questions, but before you kind of give what do you want to leave your new fan base of? God, they're sticking hard right here at 463. I don't think there's been a movement off the air, which is really good. I mean, we're sneaking up on an hour and 45.
Yeah.
But I want you to read this and then go into what you think would be something you want to leave with people. Oh, by the way, also don't forget, your contact information in the private chat.
Oh, yes. Okay.
You can paste it over. So while you're talking, why don't you read this and then type that in there as you're kind of wrapping up, and then I'll throw you in the green room, so to speak, and I'll meet you on the other side.
So Matt's insights are eye-opening. Thanks for sharing. Thank you very much for saying that. What I leave with you is the situation I found myself in. I was tired of the way things were being done. To this day, I'm still tired. I'm tired of before I formed Meridian, having to refer business out to a CPA who wasn't under my umbrella, not hearing back from him, charging my client this ridiculous fee, not doing what I specifically told him, this is what we need to be done, arguing with me in emails with the client, and making the experience for the client terrible. There is a better way. Meridian was found to bring it all together. And how I tell people is when you're with Meridian, you're talking to me. You'll talk to my CPAs, you'll talk to my other attorneys as well, because we're all working together. But in the morning, before we even talk to you, I'm sitting here sipping my coffee, eating my kolache, talking to the CPA who's telling me we're doing an S corp, open them up an LLC, I'll do the S corp work. Or we're doing a syndication, he's going to do a depreciable oil and gas play, open them up an LLC because we have to protect this investment if he gets sued. So we're all on the same team doing the same type of advice together. And that to me is the way this industry is going to move. I'm not going to pay 5 different people to give me advice. I don't have time to go see them. I'm going to call one person. That person should be me. And I'm going to say, Matt, I need you to look at everything. And so what we do at Meridian is very simple. We do something that probably none of you have ever had before. We have a financial planning, legal analysis, estate tax, asset protection, as well as a CPA who looks at tax strategy, looking at the past, and we analyze everything. And then we break it down and tell you, this is where you are at. Where do you want to go? Do you want to be over here? Well, then fantastic. This is what you need to do. And for the first time ever for the client, they're being told solid information across the board by multiple professionals, and it's all aligning. And then it just becomes, all right, where do we start? And you know me, I like to start with the estate plan, but if it's just a tax play, we don't go out and build an estate plan. That's the beauty of having it all under one house, is I don't have to sell you everything, because I'm not the guy just does estate plan. If I can't get you for a estate plan, it's a waste of time. No, if you don't want an estate plan, fantastic. What are we doing? Asset protection, great. Tax strategy, great. So now it's not this sales pitch. It's, this is what you need. This is how you protect yourself. This is what we can help you do. And to me, it's going to change the industry, because we're all tired of the way it is. And so that's my spiel.
I couldn't agree with you more, and that's a beautiful spiel. I do want to set something up with you, and I think we ought to do a tax thing, because what you just said goes through the full course. I mean, if you're running your life and you're having any amount of success, I mean, if you're somebody just that's beyond a mail carrier and you don't have any investments in that, you know, it's not just a regular income coming in, you're making bills meet at the end of the day. That's one thing. But if anything that you're building at all is always at risk, and it usually has a progression that follows along what you're talking about, and tax strategy is one part of that, no doubt.
It's key part.
Yeah, and but it's the whole menu is kind of almost, as we were talking today, it almost kind of goes hand in hand and next. So I'm gonna throw you in the green room, so to speak. Keep your hands off the peanuts. I'm gonna wrap up here. I do want to talk to you about maybe setting up a time to get together here in the next week or so and go over a couple of different things. Perfect. So why don't
Yeah.
you give your new fan base here a big wave and a how you be, guys, and
How you be,
I'm gonna
guys?
I'm gonna put you on the other side. Let me make sure I got this right. Actually, I think I added your name extra. I shouldn't have, but here. We all
Yeah.
good, right?
There you go. Yeah, and that's my LinkedIn. The website meridianlg.com. That's slowly posting things to it, such as some other podcasts. I have my own podcast that we're pushing out called Talking Law. I'm
Oh, wow.
constantly on LinkedIn, and you can find me all over the place. We're on Facebook. Both of the pages are Meridian Legal Advisors, as well as me personally, Matthew Meredith. And come talk to me. I'd happy to help people if you're interested in getting good advice that is consistent with everything working together. I'm here for you.
All right, brother. Give everybody a big wave and hang out for me back there, and I'll see you on the
Will
other
do.
side. All right. Oh, sorry. All right,
Oh, you
finish
were
that
good.
last
I was saying, take care, everybody.
Take care. I know. I try. I've been working for a year to get that down perfect, and every once in a while I miss one. So please say "take care" again one more time.
Take care.
All right, now I work, and see, I ended that one perfectly now. So, as we were talking, this show has the ability to bring dynamic and important information to people that don't normally have access or don't even know the right questions to ask. That's why this platform exists and why I need to throw it into an LLC or something. No, but the at the end of the day, I'm very proud of the experts that come on the show and bring on some information that, boy, really gets you thinking about things. And I saw that today in the evidence of some of the questions that, or all the questions really that came on. And the last comments here, insights and are eye opening. And thanks for sharing. The point is that when you have built your life up over a certain amount of time, and you've built up the life that you've put into it. You made Matt had made a comment earlier on in the conversation about, hey, I'm dead. I don't care. What do I care? If you're going through and you're building this up and yeah, you're going to be moved on. You're moving on to another space and you're not here, but your memory is, and the memory of what those assets are, and the memory of what all of that was, that's now being passed on, whether it continues to the generations or not. You're still grandpa, you're still dad. I speaking for myself, and this is kind of the last memory of what your influence is on your loved ones, and your influence is to your loved ones and your family members and so forth. And to put all that into a place of risk or a place of chaos, yeah, you're not here, but your legacy is. And this isn't a guilt thing, this isn't any big deal, but your legacy's still here. And I know I've got a lot of frustration about my own family because of that legacy, and this whole legacy should be something else. I talked about earlier. My mom carried a legacy throughout my life, obviously, and I watched her build it from no business, working in different industries, and finally getting to that journey that put her on that path. And so, if nothing else, folks, don't look at something like, I won't be there, I'm going to be passed away, what am I going to care? Because all of that you want to leave onto your family for them to build bigger, better, right? We could do competing taglines. We can make America great again. You can make your family great again, or you can build back better. So whatever way you fall on the thing, but these are true facts that you want that to happen, but you also got to realize something, that your legacy is now at risk. And it's not like you're doing anything bad or good, bad, or indifferent, but you want that legacy to be, something that passes on, not just the assets, but the lack thereof, or the chaos that exists out of what comes from your passing. And the more expertise you have in that experience or that effort, I mean, let's face it, the more likely you're going to have success with it. You're going to have, and I'm just focused on this whole legacy thing because I'm getting towards the end of my years. I've got a long way to go. I'm not planning on passing anytime soon or anything like that. But at the end of the day, you're passing on a legacy. You're passing on something. You're passing on that something with the image of what it is that's attached to it. And so how well do you want that to go? How well do you want not only your assets to be protected while you're here, the tax strategies that you need to keep the most of your assets, but then you get into things like trusts and wills where, versus probate and what happens. So all of those stages really kind of lead to a lasting legacy, which isn't just the hard assets you left behind. It's the ability to pass that through in a form, in a shape, in a manner that leaves everybody at peace. And that's the beauty of experts like Matt here. And what I was really attracted to in when we were first talking was that all in one menu. You've got the ability to be covered through one action, which makes life itself so much more simple. And I'm not here trying to be on Matt's sales team here or anything, but sometimes things just make sense, and sometimes we need to really listen to advice, and we really need to, like I do with producer Barbie and trying to get this damn monologue dialed in and more feeling of the show. We had a great people. We still got 400 people in. They're listening to me monologue on as I wrap up the show. But I just want to leave you guys with this. And it's very simple. You guys see me do this every once in a while, and it's just that I'm out.
Before you leave, if you'd like to watch another one of the podcasts, click the first link in the description. We love having you here, and we appreciate all your support.
And with that, producer Barbie and I are out.